I want to thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about how mid-market companies can overcome challenges to adopt talent analytics and drive improved decision-making. My name is Jennifer Hanneman. I'm the Director of Client Value at People Insight and the moderator for today's webinar. Feel free to comment on Twitter throughout the session using the hashtag Bersin. Now, a few logistics before we get started. You should see a control panel on the top right-hand side of your screen. Near the top of this panel, you'll see an orange or red arrow pointing to the right. If you minimize the control panel, you can see the webinar without instruction. So you just click on this and it will minimize the control panel to a vertical tab. At the bottom of the control panel is a text box where you can submit questions. Feel free to send questions at any time during the session, and we will respond to these at the end of the presentation. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please send along any and all questions that you have. We'll go through as many submitted questions as we can. If we can't get to your question, we will send out responses afterwards. And just one final note, we are recording the session, and a link will be provided to everyone that registered via email. This also will be posted on our website. I am thrilled to introduce two speakers for today. Karen O'Leonard is the Vice President of Analytics and Benchmarking Research at Bersin by Deloitte. She's been at Bersin for over 12 years, and in her current role is responsible for providing research tools and services to help members improve their analytic capabilities. Prior to joining Bersin, Karen worked at Apple, Sun, and eBay in roles involving research, product management, and corporate development. We really appreciate her taking the time to share her perspective on how mid-market companies can tackle their unique challenges in adopting analytics. For those who may not be familiar, Joey Restaurant Group has restaurant locations across Canada and Northwest U.S. This company has been recognized by the Great Place to Work Institute for 5 years running, and just last year received the Most Engaged Workplaces Award. As VP of HR, Andrew Martin has made considerable impact at Joey Restaurant Group. He leads with an HR philosophy to get out of the way where he can and help others achieve results they didn't think were possible. We're very excited he's able to join us to share how and what he achieved with analytics when at first he wasn't too sure what was possible. So with no further delay, I'm going to pass control over to Karen.
All right, thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. For those of you who may not be familiar with Bersin by Deloitte, we are a division of Deloitte with a membership-based offering really focused on HR leaders and providing, as Jennifer mentioned, research tools and services to help HR leaders help their businesses make better decisions. And in my role, I look at how HR leaders are using analytics and how they can make better decisions with their data. So it's a perfect topic for today, right? I'm going to be sharing some of the findings from our research and from the many, many discussions I've had with organizations about their analytics efforts, starting with, what is the path to effective analytics? And for that, I'm going to use our 4-stage maturity model. And then, I'll talk about how companies, especially those in the mid-market, can accelerate their capabilities to maturity and really get there faster. And then I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he'll describe his analytics efforts at Joey Restaurant Group. And then I'll do a quick wrap-up, and we'll take your questions. So feel free to type in your questions as we go along, and as Jennifer mentioned, we'll get to them at the end. So let's start with the path to effective analytics. And I know there's been a lot of buzz, a lot of hype around analytics and big data. So you might think that HR groups are really far along and really steaming along with their analytics efforts, but that's actually not the case. It's not as easy as some people might think. So let's take a look at where companies fall on our maturity model. This is how we look at the different stages of talent analytics within an HR organization. So I'll go over this briefly. Level 1 here at the bottom in red, you see companies are mainly focused on reporting operational and compliance metrics. And these organizations are very reactive. They're spending a lot of time responding to requests for data and running custom reports. And then at level 2, they get more advanced in their reporting efforts. They do an audience analysis to understand the different needs for data. They start to segment their reports using different filtering criteria. They start looking at trends and benchmarks. And then at level 3, which is this level in the blue area, organizations then start to develop statistical models to try to understand the root causes of issues. So it's not just we have a turnover problem in this particular big business unit. It's why do we have a turnover problem? What's driving turnover? What's related to turnover? And what can we do about it? So at this level, these organizations, these analytics teams are in a much more consultative role with their business leaders, and they're trying to help them solve some of the problems through analytics. And then at level 4, this top level, organizations here are applying statistical models to predict future events, such as who's likely to leave in the coming year. And what can we do? What very targeted talent initiatives can we put in place to help those people stay? So these organizations, are very well integrated with their business planning efforts, and they're building a culture of data-driven decision-making. So that's our model, at least the quick version of it. If we look at where organizations fall in our model, it looks like this. So you see here very few HR organizations in our study, and this was done last year. Only 4% have reached level 4, building those capabilities to do predictive analytics. And another 10% have reached this third stage and are using advanced analytics. So the vast majority of HR team, this 86% in these first 2 levels, are still in very early stages, focused primarily on reporting. And I think that really speaks to the challenges and the time and the resources that it typically takes to get from a level 1 or level 2 to a level 4. It can take several years to build those capabilities internally. But the problem is a lot of HR leaders say, well, I don't have years. I have to do something now. So let's talk about how you can accelerate your analytics capabilities to get to a level 3 or a level 4 faster. So it doesn't take you years to get there. We found 5 areas through our research that are primary differentiators of mature analytics teams, those at levels 3 and 4. And these areas, I'm going to describe them in a minute, but these are all very challenging for organizations. But if you can improve in these areas, you can potentially speed up your efforts in your progression of maturity with talent analytics. So I'm going to start with talking about 2 things, data quality and IT support, because those are somewhat interrelated, and these are the 2 that are on either end of my little car picture. So if we start with data quality, there are so many issues with data quality. It's such a challenge in so many organizations. You'll have missing data. You'll have inaccurate data. You may have duplicate data entries, especially if you're pulling from different systems and you find out that the data doesn't match up and you're wondering, well, what's my single source of truth here? Defining data standards is one of the most important items here. Because in a lot of organizations, things are measured in different ways, right? How many arguments have you had about headcount numbers within your organization, as an example? So it's really important that everyone is measuring data in the same way and everyone understands what the metrics mean. So since there are so many issues with data quality, and the typical HR organization has probably hundreds of different data elements, what I usually recommend is to first understand the key metrics that are most important to your organizations. So what decisions are you trying to make, and what data do you have that can help make those decisions? And then prioritize those metrics and work to improve that data first. And then there are lots of other steps to improving your data quality, and we don't have time to go into all these here. We have a research report on it if you're interested. But I always say start with prioritizing your data elements, your most important data elements, and then start working to improve the quality of those. And then as your analytics efforts get more sophisticated, the data management issues get even more and more complex. You have more data to clean. You'll have more data to integrate. You've got more data to manage. And that's where the IT support comes in, because IT can help with those issues. But I know a lot of HR people, and you may be among them, who say, I have to work around IT because I don't get the support that I need from IT. So this whole area can be really challenging, especially for a mid-market company, because a mid-market company may not have a lot of resources to dedicate to cleaning and integrating and managing data and setting up data governance processes, and you might not be able to get the support you need from IT. So for mid-market company, that's where turning to a solution provider can potentially help, because a solution provider can help with the data cleaning, the data integration, the data management efforts. And I think Andrew's going to talk a little bit more about that later on and what they did within Joey Restaurant Group. So the second way to improve your analytics capabilities is through dashboards. And I know dashboards and reporting may not be the sexiest, most glamorous thing when it comes to analytics, but it is a really important component to your overall analytics strategy. Everyone just wants to jump to the predictive analytics, right? But getting a view into your key metrics or KPIs, comparing those across different groups or functions, trending that data over time, comparing it against benchmarks, those are all really important to help you gain insights. And one key point about dashboards, and you probably have dashboards, maybe many different dashboards within your organization, but one of the things I always look for is, are they easy for your stakeholders to understand? They should highlight trends. They should pinpoint potential problem areas. So you want to make your dashboards really simple, because you don't want your stakeholders to be pouring through reams and reams of data or graphs trying to figure it out and asking, what does this really mean? You want to make it really simple for people to understand what are the key takeaways here. And Andrew, I think, is going to show you some of the reports that his team is using, so you can see more about what I mean. And then the other point I want to make about dashboards and reporting is that a lot of teams at levels 1 and 2 on our maturity model devote a significant portion of time to reporting. You can see in this example on the left here, 60% of this organization's staff time is spent on reporting. In your organization, it might even be more than that. But where you really want to be is over here on the right, shifting the focus more toward these items at the bottom, building a culture of analytics by upskilling your HR staff to be more data savvy. Consulting with business leaders to help them solve their problems through analytics. Engaged in HR and business and workforce planning. This is what you want to be spending your time on. And again, for mid-market companies, with scarce resources, you could really get bogged down in reporting and not be able to break out of that cycle. So again, that's where potentially a solution provider might be able to help in providing the resources to take care of the reporting so that you're more freed up to do some of these more strategic activities and spend your time on consulting and business planning and building those skill sets within the HR team so that they are more able to interpret and drive recommendations based on data. Okay. I think I lost my clicker. Could someone click? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so let's look at the team. This is obviously another critically important area when it comes to analytics. What we found, from studying teams within advanced analytics organizations or organizations at level 3 and 4 is that it really takes a complex mix of skills to be good at all aspects of reporting and analytics. You need strong consulting skills to work with business leaders and understand their challenges and figure out how analytics might help solve their problems. You need database skills to extract data. You need statistical skills to analyze it. You need data visualization skills to help you tell the story, through data and graphics. And then you need skills to interpret the findings in your business context and help business leaders make decisions from it. So again, if you're a mid-market company, you may not be able to hire 8 or 10 people who have all these different skill sets. So, which is what we find in a big company. They might have 8, 10, or more people with a mix of these skills, and they take a very team-based approach to their analytics projects. But if you can't afford that many people to dedicate to an analytics team, we find that a lot of mid-market companies are finding external partners like universities or consultants or solution providers. So you can look externally for some of these skills. But internally, you still need people with strong consulting and communication skills, people who can work with the business leaders and understand their problems. You need someone who can take data and interpret it in the context of your organization and who can help drive actions from it. So that requires some knowledge of data analysis and stats, but you don't have to be a statistician. And I think Andrew will explain that from his context and his experience at Joey Restaurant Group. Okay. Then finally, we have the need to build a culture of data-driven decision-making. And this might sound easy, but actually it's arguably the hardest part in this whole thing. And it's because it takes time, and unfortunately a lot of HR groups lag behind other functions in this regard. They don't have a reputation for strong analytics capabilities. So building that culture really requires getting HR staff and business leaders comfortable looking at data, interpreting it, and really believing in data.
I believe we lost Karen.
Yes, I think we did. Why don't we move forward? And I know she was wrapping up in the conversation, and let's move forward, and I'll just move forward in her slides to Joey Restaurant Group. And one moment, Andrew, and I will pass control over to you.
Yeah, I think I've got control here. Anyway, as you're doing that, just for those of you that are out there, thanks for listening in. I got to say, it's weird staring at my computer in my office talking to myself. I hope I don't sort of lose my train of thought. What I'm hoping is that sort of in the next 20 minutes, I can leave you with some insight that will assist you in moving forward, no doubts, with some challenges that you're facing about setting off down the path of developing your own sort of analytics and likely in the HR field, and give you some comfort that you can do it whether you're a mathematical genius or you've got nightmares about grade 12 algebra still. You can take this on. You can take this on with the support of somebody who's an expert in this area, and you'll get great results.
You're good to go, Andrew. We seem to be experiencing some audio challenges, so we will just, if you could just hold on for one moment, we'll see if we can get Andrew back, and we will continue with the presentation. One moment, please.
Hi, Jennifer. It's Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Karen.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened, but from working at some technology companies, I can tell you technology doesn't always work the way you want it to. Do you want me to finish where I left off while we're waiting for Andrew?
Yes, let's do that. Let me. Oh, Andrew, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Why don't we, Karen, why don't we, for the sake of time, continue with Andrew's, and then as part of the wrap-up, the points that you were making in the last slide, I'm sure will come through.
That sounds great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Jennifer, before just where did I jump off?
I will reset your slides to where? Right at the beginning. So we're good to go now, Andrew.
Oh, right. So right from the word go?
Right from the word go.
Okay. All right. So thank you for listening in. My goal here in the next sort of 15, 20 minutes is just really to walk you through the experience I had with bringing analytics into our company. I know most of you probably listening in are not experienced in sort of the analytics area. You might not be mathematically gifted, but hopefully I can give you some comfort that you can take this on and be very successful, and you'll be very pleased that that you did take the time and the effort to do this. The Joey Restaurant Group is really rapidly growing restaurant company. We have 32 restaurants, 4 concepts. We are in as far east as Ontario. We just opened up in Ottawa, and then we're in Washington State as well and opening up in California. So we have 3,500 employees approximately, and we're really going through that growing pains of being a small company to a mid-sized company transition, where one person cannot sort of oversee all aspects of the business. You can't see exactly what's going on, so you can't always make decisions based on what you see with your eyes. You actually have to go through information. So that's a real transition that the company is making. And one of the areas that really got us going in the area of analytics was our GM and chef compensation. So for the first 20 years of our existence, our compensation plan for the GMs and chefs was very, very simple. They had really just earned a percentage of the profits of the store. But as we grew, we realized in 2012 that we had about 50% of the people on different compensation plans. So we were completely mucking up the system, so we realized something's got to change. So we realized that to do this, we were going to have to differentiate our people based on performance. And to do this, we needed some really good information and facts to back up our decisions. You couldn't go into a meeting with somebody and say, hey, we're moving your pay up or down, but we can't really tell you why. So we decided, you know what, we need to gather some information. So I realized that this is important to me, important to the HR field, and I wanted to take on this project. So I led the team of Vice President of Operations, the COO, our culinary operations team through a process. And really what we were looking for was, what we wanted to measure in performance, how we were going to go about measuring these factors, what weightings we were going to give to factors, and where this data was going to come from. And remarkably, that actual process was quite smooth. But at certain points, one of the VPs of Ops turned and stated, like, who's going to collect all this data? And then all eyes kind of came on me. So I was put up to the task of actually gathering it, being able to display all this information. So here's just some of the data that we needed to compile. So it's secret shops, sales, cost of goods, theoretical costs, like this information lives in all sorts of different places. It's not connected in any way, and yet somehow I've got to figure out a way to kind of gather all this information. And so, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. One, I could really go at it with an Excel spreadsheet. I'm very good at Excel. I know how to do all sorts of interesting things with graphs, and I could present the information. But what I realized was this is going to be an absolute data collection nightmare. I mean, trying to keep this up to date, trying to add in new information. I was going to be required. This is going to be my full-time job, just actually maintaining this, and the accuracy was going to be a big problem. Another area I started thinking about was maybe I could, take on an Access database and develop that. Didn't know a lot about Access. I wasn't a whiz in that area, and I just didn't have the time. I'm just thinking, I don't have the time to do all this. I've got to get moving on this program pretty quickly. So this is the point at which I started feeling like I'm hyperventilating a little bit and feeling a little bit like this guy. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and the COO kept bugging me saying, hey, where's the information, when are we going to get it? So I was actually speaking at a conference, at an HR conference, and I ran into John Pensum from People Insight, and we got chatting about what his company did, and then in return I sort of talked about my plight of how I'm going to gather all this information. And his response to me was, that's not exactly what we do. We are more in sort of the people information, and we haven't really dabbled in the finance side of things so much, but let me talk to my team. And they came back to me a couple of days later and said, you know what, we'd like to take this on and work with you to see kind of what we can come up with. So I suddenly had a partner in crime, and I was quite excited to have that. So here's sort of a quick run through of the process that we went through. The first step really was this vision clarification. So I had a chance in September of 2013. I started working with Steve Johnson of People Insights, and we really spent time talking through what my vision was. I've been a consultant, and so I have a sense of what sort of good and bad consulting is, and he was exceptionally good at listening to what it was I was up to, what I was trying to create, and why. And once he really understood what I was talking about and ensured I understood that he understood, it was then that he started adding some sort of his insights into where we might go with things. So brilliant consultant to work with, certainly hands down the best consultant I've ever worked with, made the process easy. The second stage, that once we had sort of the basic vision nailed down, we looked at sort of the data sources, and we worked through what data sources we wanted to gather information from, where was this information, what the information looked like. And you know, with Steve Johnson from People Insights, we actually were able to walk through all the data and really get a good sense of what we had and what was going to be valuable and what we needed to clean up. So I had a really good sense of what I was getting myself into. And then once we kind of went through that, we looked at how we were going to connect the data together. And the way I'll describe it, I'm sure other people describe it differently, but there's almost like a primer is needed. If you've got all this information coming from 20 different sources, how do you connect this data together? What's the key? What's the way that it meshes together? And for us, we came down to the idea that it was going to be about store number, it was going to be about the financial period, it was going to be about the employee number. And so no matter where the information was coming from and how it kind of ended up in the system, we were able to connect all the dots together to create the pictures that we needed. So once we had that, we started to sort through the data. So you know, we uploaded it into the system, and then we started to kind of play with how the information might look. And it really, again, working with somebody who has done this a lot, you can show information, display information a certain way, and it means nothing. It has no excitement, no bite. And then you display it slightly differently, and it suddenly takes on a completely different sort of vision, and it jumps off the page. And that's where the expertise of somebody who does this for a living really comes through. I have way too many disparate things to deal with, benefits, you know, compensation, you name it, like any other HR person, and I just don't have quite the time to dedicate to coming up with how the graph might look perfectly. So it was great. I love going through the conversation and developing what these reports were going to look like. What was even better was being able to, you know, leave the phone call and know that Steve still had to do all the work, and I could go off and do other things. So he was taking all my vision and putting it into play. And then I tell you, the first time I actually saw the reports, we were under an incredible timeline to show the reports to the COO and the operations team. And when Steve walked it through me in the morning before my presentation in the afternoon, I tell you, I fell off my chair. The ability to pull all this information together, report it, make sense of it, show trends, I knew that it was going to be something that these guys had never seen before, certainly in our company. And bang, I was absolutely right. Our COO was just floored. He said, I've never seen anything like this in our company. And one of the VPs of Ops sort of jumped across the table to give me a hug because I was going to make his job so much easier. And then from there, we have, you know, Steve and I sort of deal probably at least once a week, sort of refining reports, adding new reports, changing charts, dashboards, all sorts of stuff, because of all this information in the system. And now it's just a matter of how do people want this information displayed, what do they want to get out of this information. So incredibly sort of powerful tool that I now have at my fingertips. And I seem to be, oh, there we go. I thought I'd just, actually I'm going to go back here. I thought I'd walk you through just some of the reporting. You know, unfortunately, I can't give you anything out there that is terribly confidential. But this here is a very, very as simple as the reports get. But you're seeing, you know, 2012, 2013 comparisons. You're seeing our turnover by period of time across the company, regardless of position. And what it does is it enables us to start to slice and dice kind of what's happening out in all our stores and in our company as a whole. Incredibly useful information for us. Again, very, very simple way of looking at this information. We can start getting into the information in a little more detail. All the data is in there. We started, this report here is showing that, you know, 2013 versus 2012, what was our turnover in the first 15 days by store. So for most industries out there, you look at those numbers and probably want to jump off a bridge, but in our industry and the way we operate, some of these numbers are quite reasonable, but it's important that we understand what the numbers are, where the numbers are occurring, so we can start to dig into this data. So I was able to print off all various reports for different periods of time last year, and we actually, with our entire company, all our operators, and walked them through everything, and we talked through all the costs associated with sort of the turnover rates that we had, and really was it money well spent. Here is a report. So again, we're gathering information from all sorts of different areas. We have financial numbers, and these are regional views. So I can look at Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, etc. Groupings, business groupings, and I can roll up all the stores and create an average figure for that particular region. And I can compare these to other regions. I can compare them to previous years. I'm looking at financial information here. I'm looking at audit averages, which are internal audits, our corporate audit scores, breaking it down into even looking at our kitchen. Again, we're able to slice and dice any piece of information and display it in any way that we want. For ease of presentations, when I'm doing this live on our system, I'm able to just click on Toronto, and instantly it highlights all the scores for Toronto, and all the others kind of go off in the background. Just useful tools like that to make it really easy to see information. Because what I began to realize is all this information at your fingertips, it's very easy to overwhelm people, and they don't want to see everything. It's too much to take in at one time. So the more you can kind of simplify things, the better. Within secret shops, this is an old chart here, but we're kind of going through an interesting process with our secret shops. So we have our own employees actually do our secret shops in our company, and they go out and they gather all sorts of information. That information is downloaded into a system. I then can fire it over into the People Insight software, and we can track by store, really by person, for every single question, what the answers are, what the scores are, how we're doing, is there a trend that's happening, are we seeing better hospitality scores, and then I can actually cross-reference that with what's going on in terms of what our labor spend is in that particular area. So are we spending more in an area, are we getting more value for it or not? So we can start to connect all the pieces of data and start to make better informed decisions on what you've got. And again, there's just a piece that, again, clicking on Eaton Center there at the time, they were doing the best in all the areas. And again, just highlights how simple it is to kind of present the information to people who are viewing it. For us, people development is an absolutely critical component of success in our organization. We want individuals who are able to develop other chefs and GMs. So we've set up a system where we can gather all this information on who has developed whom, who has given points to whom, and this is a scorecard which indicates the number of points, where the points came from, what level the points came from, and again, I've been able to slice and dice and present this. What was interesting, actually, this is from last year, When we were redoing some evaluations this year, one of the VPs said, hey, it'd be too bad we didn't have the information from last year. And I'm like, well, it's actually right here. Click. Boom. Pulled it up, and he's like, well, that's pretty amazing. And so we're able to go through and just pick whatever person we wanted, and it populates with the new information. So incredibly valuable for these guys. So for me, the impact of the analytics software, I'm able to see the trends in the business that they just weren't available prior. I was living kind of day to day with data that came in. You looked at it, here's the data, and then it's gone. Now you look at new data. Now I'm able to see the trends in the business, and we're able to make decisions based on trends, and almost starting to get to down the road of predicting kind of what's going to be coming. The information at my fingertips, I can't tell you the speed and having the ability to just report on anything you want whenever you want. It's frustrating having to go to 10 different departments to get different pieces of information. When I can go onto this system, I can pick whatever it is I want to look at, and I can drill down right down to who was the person that got that kind of overtime. I mean, just narrowing it all the way down. It's absolutely critical. And then really the whole area of connecting information together to make sense of it. I sort of spoke to it earlier where, I can take a look at what's going on with our secret shop scores and maybe something like hospitality and how it's being perceived. And then I can also take a look at what's going on in the finance side of things with our cost of labor. And are the two equating? Are we spending wisely? Or if we touch this lever over here, what happens over here? And we're now able to do that far more than we've ever been able to do that before. And I really think that we're running much less blind than we've ever run before. So looking back, my process here, again, I'm not an analytics sort of expert. I've got a zillion things on my plate at any given time, but I started with this problem of how on earth am I going to collect all this data and how am I going to display it? So initially I was leading towards sort of Excel database or sort of Excel or an Access database. Figured that would be the easiest way to kind of get up and going, but it would have been impossible to maintain. The accuracy would have been a serious issue. My ability to use the data for future needs would have been limited to none. I never would have been able to connect the data. The connecting with an external analytics company, for me, made absolutely all the difference. They guided me through the process. They helped me understand what data I had. At times, I would forget what conversation I had sort of a week ago, and thank God Steve was taking all the notes, so he was able to get me back up to speed of where I was the week prior. We were able to dynamically link all the data I gave them. It seemed so easily. And now we've been able to create powerful reporting that really was well beyond anything that was available in the company. And I know it's driving other departments to be better at what they do. And I can tell you the extra time and investment I put into this was well worth it, well worth the effort up front. So I've got access to this information. I can run reports whenever I want. I can answer questions in seconds and blow people away with how quickly I can get them the information. I never worry about whether the information is accurate because it's once you connected it, it's connected. I never worry about whether I carried the formula through, all the cells I was supposed to, and those of you that use Excel a lot know what I'm talking about. And also, I never worry whether or not I'm using the latest version of the spreadsheet that I've created. Is this 48 or 49? It's so difficult to try and keep track of what you've got. Versus, I log in, and then I know all the data I'm looking at is the latest data. It's absolutely brilliant. So for me, that's the process that I went through, and very happy with where I'm at. And there's sort of a ton more still to do, and our opportunities are incredible. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jennifer.
Yes, and I'm actually gonna turn it over to Karen to do a quick wrap up, and maybe tie in some of the points that we missed a little bit earlier when we lost audio. Karen?
Okay. Yep. So, and thanks for that, Andrew. I know you and I have had several discussions, and I think your story is a great example of how a small to mid-market sized company can really achieve a lot with analytics without having a big stable of statisticians and database experts on hand like you might find in a large company. So I love your story. I guess just to wrap up then, a few key takeaways. I think in most cases successful analytics projects start with identifying your business priorities or identifying a pain point, like Andrew mentioned with their compensation structure. You can dive in, and I hear a lot of people say this, so just dive in and start mining the data and see what comes out of it. But I've seen a lot of companies waste a whole lot of time with that approach. So if you know your business problem or can identify a pain point, like Andrew mentioned, you can start working to solve that with analytics. So let the business problem drive the analytics and the analysis, not the data itself. Second, I think I've mentioned this, analytics is a journey. It can take many years. It can take a lot less time than that with some of the ways to accelerate the journey that I talked about. And it does require significant culture change in your organization. So start with, if you're just starting out, look for a few small wins and grow from there. And then third is, the payoff is worth it, as Andrew mentioned, in his case. And we also have many other case studies about how organizations have improved their leadership capabilities, their succession pipelines, quality of hire. Improving quality of hire is a huge area for analytics. Companies have improved their employee engagement and productivity, and their bottom lines, through analytics. So it's not always easy, but it is worth it. So those would be the three key takeaways I would say from this presentation. Andrew, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or we can just go into our Q&A.
No, maybe the last thing I would put in, and maybe it's just our company, but we'll never be a company that makes decisions simply based on data and analytics. But man, having the information at your fingertips to raise questions for you and to challenge your thinking is critical.
Right, and I think that's a good point too, is that you need the people within your organization who know the business and can blend their judgment, their experience with the data. And so it's not a substitute. You're not letting the computer make the decision for you or the software make the decision for you, but you're using that as a basis and a grounding to help you make better decisions. I think, and that's when we talked last, I think that was a key point that I pulled out from what you told me based on your experience. I think that's true for all companies, not just mid-sized ones.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I really want to thank Karen and Andrew so much for sharing their insightful advice on how mid-market companies can successfully leverage talent analytics. Just before we open the floor to questions, I wanted to give you another opportunity to submit your question via chat window and just take a minute to introduce People Insight to those who aren't familiar with us. At People Insight, we are really passionate about partnering with mid-market companies to provide HR executives and professionals timely access to all data and insights and expertise that they need to drive better decisions and outcomes. Our solution will seamlessly connect all the relevant data sources to deliver out-of-the-box workforce analytics that we then customize to what makes the most sense for your business. And I think that showed quite through Andrew's examples of how we expanded the types of analytics we offered. Part of our secret sauce is to provide much more than a software solution. We provide experts and ongoing guidance throughout your analytic journey and as your business priorities change. Our 100% focus is to partner with you and your team so that you can tell your people story with confidence, you can engage in those impactful, evidence-based conversations and drive better business outcomes. So with that, I am going to open the floor for questions and comments. And I'm going to start actually with a question for for Andrew. In your presentation, you talked a lot about adding the analytics, but it was very clear you weren't looking to replace any of your employees, but rather work with your team. So can you talk a little bit about the process you went through with your team to embrace analytics, or what kind of training or path did you guide them on to develop new skills?
Yeah, I got, as I got more and more into the analytics, I got more and more excited about it. My team actually make jokes about me being kind of a data geek now. For the majority of the sort of the data analysis and the work that's gone in from our end has sort of still lives with me, and I'm starting to kind of share that area out. My team is really excited about the ability to, take training feedback and fire it into the system and be able to start to trend that. So everybody is looking for different ways that they can use the information. I've got stores now that are, when they're doing their budgeting, I can actually present them and give them information on their trends for what they've spent on linen for over the last, 1, 2, 3 years, and how that's trending, and all the way down to those details. So for me, it's once you show the information and what the system can do and talk them through about what opportunities it would have for them, people they jump on board pretty quickly.
That's great. That's great. Now, Karen, let's talk a little bit about your experience with mid-market companies. And you talked a lot about the different types of hurdles that people have to overcome in general with analytics, data, skill set, etc. If you look specifically at mid-market companies, can you pinpoint the biggest hurdle that they might have in getting started with the analytics that you've seen?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest hurdles that Andrew actually mentioned is having no dedicated analytics staff. Like Andrew said, it's not really his day job to sit there and do analytics. And in a lot of large companies, they have staff. They have the statisticians, database experts, but that's just not possible for a mid-market company. So, that's again where, as Andrew mentioned, leveraging the expertise of an external partner can really help to fill that gap. Because, like you said, it's not his day job. He needs someone to help him do that. But I will say that companies still need people who are data savvy. Like Andrew says, he's known as the data geek. He is data savvy. He can, he can interpret the findings. He can help turn those findings into insights and actions. So you still, in mid-market companies, you still need people like Andrew, people who are data savvy, who have great consulting skills, and can help turn those the data into insights and then eventually into actions.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Karen. I'm gonna go back and forth a little bit. I think there was a question that came in that said, we're looking at the store factors like cleanliness, etc. How is that data collected, and how is it loaded into People Insight? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that process, Andrew.
Yeah, so it's collected. We have our sort of 2 main audits that happen every year in all of our restaurants. Audits are happening all the time, but this is sort of a more formal ones. And our VP of Operations and our VP of Culinary Operations, they go out to every single store and they go through a massive checklist of everything. And so as they're doing that, the information then through a very simple system is captured, in essence put into an Excel spreadsheet. So then I have the information for each question attached to the store, and I also have the period of time that it occurred. And then I literally turn it into a zip file, and I zip it over to People Insights, and they connect the data. Exactly how they connect the data behind the scenes and how it all sticks together, I have no clue. All I know is I upload the data, and half an hour later I get an email back saying, yep, it's uploaded, you're ready to go. And now I have the new data, and it just changes all the reporting.
That's great. One thing I will add, because I'm guessing the question will come up, I know we handle it, is when someone's uploading data, is it secure? And yes, our process is highly secure and has gone through and continues to go through many security audits through the process. So I'll just add that on because I know that's a question that someone asks as soon as you say you upload data.
Yeah.
As we are, we're kind of, we got about 5 minutes left, and I have a question here that I think is quite insightful, and I'd actually like to get an answer from both Karen and Andrew on this one. It's saying communication beyond dashboards and information seems to be the key in the research on effectiveness of analytics. Can you speak into the ways, tools, methods used to effectively communicate with decision makers and executives? And maybe we'll start with you, Andrew, so you can talk about what you do at Joey around the communication side, and then Karen, you can provide some insights on the broader scale from your research and experience.
Well, I'm not quite sure exactly how to answer. I'm on the executive team, so when I'm communicating with the executive group, I'm able to back up what I'm talking about with actual fact, with figures and fairly simple pictorials that sort of support what I'm talking about. In terms of we were looking at some spending sort of expenses and kind of what's going on with certain areas of our business, and right in the meeting, rather than having to go off and develop reports for things, I already had the key reports that I wanted already developed in the system. So I just literally logged in and put it up on the screen, and we all are able to just kind of look at it right there. So I'm also, as I'm going through, I know what some of the hot buttons are for people out there in our business. So I'm also able to go in, and as I'm surfing sort of aspects of data, if I come across a very interesting kind of look or trend that I think they should look into, and maybe pause to think about, I'm able to instantly take that off the screen and I just forward it onto them as an image and say, hey, take a look at this. What does it mean to you? So if I pose a lot of questions through the data. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or not out there, but I hope it did.
Yeah, this is Karen. I definitely think that that's true, Andrew, and I guess I would say a couple of things. One is to make sure you know your stuff so that you have some amount of knowledge of data and statistics, just a baseline. You don't have to be a statistician, but one analytics leader told me that some of his HR staff were giving presentations of analytics projects, and it was clear that they didn't know, even baseline information like what's the difference between a percent versus percentage versus percentile. And immediately they lose credibility with finance, who does know, a lot about data and analysis, and with the executive team. So you have to build that credibility, and it's so important to build the skill set of your HR team to be more data savvy so that they can get that credibility. Because if you don't have credibility, no one is going to believe you or listen to you when you're talking about, an analytics project and the findings and what to do about it. The other piece of it is, I guess I would just talk about the data visualization side. And, I think a lot of people get bogged down in analytics projects in talking about the stats and talking about the numbers and R squared and, all those technical aspects, and the executives just kind of glaze over, and they really just want to know the baseline of what does this mean and what should we do about it. So data visualization can be really powerful, and it's actually the skill set that most analytics leaders tell me is missing, is the biggest missing skill set from their team. Because it is kind of a different beast, being able to come up with ways to graphically depict findings. Companies are using videos. I talked with one company that had an animator that it was using, all in an effort to simplify the findings and tell the story in a way that's simple and compelling and memorable. So, and like Andrew said, you may not have someone on your team who is a data visualization expert, or you may not want to have that person on your team. So you may want to turn to an external partner again to help you with that, that particular aspect of your projects.
Well, I want to thank you both very much again for your contribution today, for joining in, and your patience with the some audio challenges midway through. I'm glad we got you back online to finish the presentation. And I want to thank everybody who was able to join us today. We encourage the conversation around talent analytics to continue. We would love to connect with you at People Insight or through Twitter, through the Burson hashtag, or feel free to connect to People Insight Burson or Andrew. You will be receiving a wonderful research bulletin that Karen just wrote that does feature Joy Restaurant Group, called A Hop, Skip, and a Jump, How to Accelerate Your Talent Analytic Capabilities, following this webinar, but it is also available on our site. And so with that, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season and all the best in 2015, and thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great holiday.